All right. Welcome in to another long distance Devils here at Ice Time Hockey Southwest, College Hockey Southwest Weekly. As you can see, my long distance Devils got a message for everybody. Countdown to 22 wins, 12 to go. Congratulations, Sun Devils.
You like the high tech,
I,
the
I
slick
love
production values?
it. I would expect nothing less.
That's what you get here. Nothing but the best.
Well, Paul Hornstein, welcome in. Another weekend, another split on the road at Harvard.
It was an interesting weekend. I for the first time on Friday was the first time I really thought that wasn't a game they could have or should have won.
Right.
Um, and I think Saturday ended up being a much bigger test than I think they initially thought it was going to be. And they passed it.
Yeah, absolutely. They beat Harvard and they beat the officials, from what I understand.
Well, why are you always dragging me into these things right away? We don't even get to ease our way into it.
There was no easing into Saturday night. It was one-sided, without a doubt.
It was, first of all, I don't know what was being said on the ice.
Yeah.
They called those misconduct penalties. Listen, I've been a coach. I've officiated, maybe not, I was roller hockey as opposed to ice hockey, but I've been in that position. And for a referee to blow that whistle that fast on a misconduct, either he was overly sensitive or somebody said some magic words.
Right.
And judging on the comments after Saturday's game, I don't think it was the magic words part. So I have no idea what was being said.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to the players tomorrow. I'll see if I can get anything out of anybody, but it was definitely interesting, and it's tough when you're on the road anyway. And then, from what I understand, the long distance Devils came out in big support and really were dominating the crowd there.
Well, I want to get into that too, because I think that will lead into other things. But Friday night, it didn't matter what the crowd was; they just didn't play well.
Right.
And you could sit there and say, you wonder what this official is going to say, you wonder what that official is going to say. Friday night, it didn't matter. It did not. They were never really in the game. They only took 4 penalties. It sounds like they took more than that because Harvard got 2 power play goals.
Right.
But the combination of who Harvard has on their back line, and eventually a hot streak's going to end.
Yeah.
ASU they killed about 15 or 16 penalties in a row. Eventually somebody's going to score.
Yeah, exactly.
And
especially when you got the number, I think Harvard is number 2 in the country, weren't they? In the power play coming in.
They were, and after the Friday night's game, I think they were almost at 50% for the season. So, and when you look at it, their defense has 4 NHL draft picks on it. One is a 6th rounder, and the other guys are 2nd and 3rd rounders. So you're giving those guys that much space on a power play. They're going to burn you. They did.
Yep, absolutely. And I think Coach Powers said that to me in our 5-minute Powers play session last week when he said he was really worried about Fox. He did not want him dancing around with the puck, and on Friday night he danced around with the puck.
He danced and danced and danced, and his card was full.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up this past weekend series, let's jump right into that poll because I thought that was interesting. And we'll talk USCHO first, but they come in at number 16, so they jump up ahead of North Dakota, which has got to hurt somewhere along the lines in the upper Midwest. But
North Dakota's not playing well,
right? And only 3 teams in the country right now with double-digit wins, and Arizona State being one of them. I don't care if you played 14 games, you played 11 games, or whatever you played, you still have 10 wins, and
10 wins.
That's something to be said. And then you look at the pairwise. I believe they're number 7, and in the RPI they're number 6, which tells you the strength of schedule and the wins that they're getting over some teams. You can only play who you have in front of you, but that's where my magic number sits at 12 right now, because I really think 22 wins is that magic number to get into the tournament. It may take more, and they may get more, but I think if you get to 22, you're in pretty good position. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you, as you said last week, but you have to look at certain things, because I'll be honest with you, I was surprised they moved up.
Right.
I thought they would stay right about where they are, because Harvard got off to a slow start. There were a lot of people that picked them as one of the favorites in the ECAC, so it was kind of a mixed bag as far as they were concerned. But I figured with the split, they might stay where they were. Now, they got that split, winning that second game the way they did, in basically one of the two hearts of college hockey.
Right.
Being the Boston area and the other being Michigan and Minnesota. So maybe the way they came back and played on Saturday night might have influenced the way some of the people voted. I think you're going to see...
I thought it was interesting, the one, I can't remember if it was USCHO or College Hockey News maybe, that said DeCord steals a win for Sun Devils. I'm going like, Joey was awesome. There's no doubt about it. But I think that was more of a team effort overcoming the penalties and the adversity than it was just Joey DeCord stealing a win. I think they just went out and won that game.
Well, they did win the game, but they actually outshot Harvard on Friday night, even though it doesn't feel like it. And they got outshot on Saturday. And what I haven't broken down and what I would be interested in seeing is, what was the breakdown of shots on goal 5-on-5?
Right.
Because, as we said, Harvard had 7 power plays on Saturday, and that could have been a recipe for disaster. But the penalty killers rebounded and cut them off 6 out of 7 times. So they dropped down to number 2 overall in the country on the penalty kill, but it's only by a little bit, not by much.
Right.
So
they may get their chances to improve that this weekend at Nebraska-Omaha.
And we'll get to that as we always do. But I think the bottom 10 in the poll this year is going to be a scramble.
Yeah.
It'll be kind of hard for somebody to break into that top 10. Those teams are playing really, really well. I'm actually kind of surprised that St. Cloud jumped Duluth. Now, St. Cloud's got only 1 loss, but they swept at home, whereas Duluth split on the road, and they were number 1. It's very unusual to see a flip-flop like that.
Well, in Minnesota right now, between St. Cloud and Duluth, it's the same thing. It's Brett Larson at St. Cloud, and it's Scott Sandelin at Duluth. It's still Minnesota Duluth. It's just one location is in St. Cloud.
Yeah, so I think, anyway, as I was saying, I think where they were playing this weekend had an influence on the polls. I don't know the breakdown of how they vote, but once again, it's them coming there and winning that game and being in that series got it to be, in some of the voters' eyes, I'm sure, something more than just this story of this team outlying somewhere, where there's not a whole lot of ice, and got to see it firsthand.
Yeah, I agree. And, for those people that don't think we have ice, I want to invite them to Oceanside Ice Arena on a Thursday night when it's an ACHA game going on, because I was as cold as I've ever been at a hockey game. I literally had to go and warm up between periods because I couldn't make my fingers work on my camera. That's how bad and how cold it was at Oceanside. So we have ice here in Arizona. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm just, but sometimes unless you see something,
right,
it's hard to get a grasp on it. But 14 in the USA Today, USA Hockey poll, 16 in the USCHO, 6 and 7 in the RPI and the pairwise. And don't forget that number dropped just a little bit as
Yeah.
Harvard goes on. If they have a better season than they've started with, you'll see that win and loss will kind of negate each other and improve ASU's pairwise ranking. And we said it last week, pairwise is what matters.
Absolutely. And off of the pairwise, I'm going to go back to that USHCO poll again for a minute. I looked at that. I think they can get into the number 8 position, looking at the team, unless the teams that are 1 through 7 really, really falter. I mean, they've already beaten Penn State once. The only way that they're going to be able to advance, to me anyway, beyond the number 8 spot at any point is if they knock off Minnesota State or Minnesota Duluth in the Classic. Because they're not going to get a shot at any of those other teams.
Well, let's put it this way. Right now, if I'd have told you at the beginning of the season that all 4 teams in that tournament were going to be ranked,
right?
I don't know if you'd have believed me. You would have assumed Minnesota State and Minnesota Duluth would be ranked,
and
but you wouldn't be. And by the way, Clarkson was at the top of others receiving votes.
Yeah.
So by the time the tournament rolls around, you could have all 4 teams in the poll. And how often do you say that about an in-season tournament?
Yeah, right. And
so
here's the thing coming into this too. Arizona State's going to play Clarkson first, right?
Right.
Minnesota State and Minnesota Duluth are going to fight each other out. Minnesota State and Minnesota Duluth are both coming in without their head coaches. Both of them will be with the World Junior team. So that's a little bit of a challenge, let's say, to stay focused, to stay online. Knowing Scott Sandlin, knowing Brett Larson, both of them will have their teams ready to roll in their absence. But you know what? The other thing, I don't know. I haven't seen the rosters for the World Junior, so I'm not sure if there's any Bulldogs or St. Cloud State kids that are on that roster, but there very well could be.
I would be shocked if there wasn't 1 or 2 anyway.
Right. So they come in, and if ASU takes care of Clarkson and then beats that team that comes out of the Minnesota State UMD series or game, that could turn out to be a big feather in the cap for the Sun Devils.
Could be. But let's look at it this way. If I'd have told you at the end of the season that ASU was going to be ranked, maybe even go as high as 10th in the poll, you tried to tell me. I'm not going to deny it, because if I do deny it, you're gonna call me on it anyway. So
darn right. At the end of last season, I would have said, "Hey, they've got a lot of good guys coming in." But this summer, when I saw the kids on the ice, it was pretty immediate to me where they were. And then the real kicker to me was when I watched North Dakota and Minnesota play the same weekend that ASU was dominating Nebraska Omaha. And I looked at all 3 of the teams, had seen all 3 of them play, and I came back to Coach Powers and I said, your team is better than North Dakota and Minnesota right now. Right now. And I didn't say it was going to be that way in March, but I told him right now they're better, and right now they're proving it.
And if you look at that game Saturday night, I think they're going to look back at that game at some point during this season and say, hey, we did that. We can do it again.
Right.
1 for 7 on the power play was Harvard. The penalty killers got back in the defenseman's face. Yep. I think they might have been backing up a little bit on Friday night, just because sometimes reputations precede you.
Yeah.
And I think that they got more aggressive on Saturday night. Like I said, I wonder what the breakdown is on shots on goal 5-on-5. And they took advantage of their opportunities.
Before we jump into Nebraska Omaha, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
that's okay.
Let's talk a little bit about the lineup changes. Max Ballantyne saw his first action. I know you're a big Max Ballantyne fan.
I am.
Tell me what you thought of Max and how he performed.
Well, for a guy playing his first game of the season, you worry about a guy being over anxious, going out of his way to make hits, going out of his way to make a play when there was no play to make. And I know it sounds crazy. We talk about this for other positions on the ice, including the guys in the striped shirts. You didn't notice.
Right.
Which you'll take as a defenseman, especially as a third pair defenseman, because that means you didn't make any mistakes.
Right.
So, listen, was he a big offensive player in the game? No, but I don't think you're looking for one of your third pair defensemen to supply you with a lot of offense.
No, and he may have solidified it a little bit more, because I think we all agree that Jacob Strasburg is more offensive than defensive in his role on the ice. So I don't know that Jacob did anything that warranted him coming out. I think it was just time to make a change and see what happened. And Coach Powers, for all 3 years that I've watched him with this NCAA team, has seemed to pull the right or push the right buttons every time he's got an opportunity to do it. He doesn't very often make a mistake on that end of it. So when he puts somebody in the lineup, there's a good reason for it.
Well, listen, he went through the first dozen games of the year. His rationale was, it ain't broke, let's not fix it.
Right.
Okay. They didn't play well on Friday. I guarantee you the coach was, to say the least, unhappy. I would imagine the players were as unhappy as the coach was, but they came back on Saturday. They made the lineup changes. They moved P.J. Morocco up to the second line. They moved Demetrius Kumanzis down with Anthony Croston and Dylan Holman. And did they score a lot of goals? No. But Harvard didn't have a whole lot of chances either.
Right.
Despite the number of shots. Most of their really good scoring opportunities came on the power play, and they had 7 of them.
And I think sometimes, Paul, you can't just look at goals scored. You have to look at scoring chances,
right,
and shots on goal. You mentioned that one of the games, the Friday night game, they outshot, but they lost the game. And the second game, they get outshot and they win. So it's really about what the score says at the end of 60 minutes, or in this case, in the end of overtime. But one thing that I like is this team doesn't have any quit in it.
No.
None of those guys ever stop playing the game from start to finish, and it shows in the overtime. I mean, they just make plays in overtime.
Well, let's put it this way too. The Saturday night's overtime, the game goes to overtime. It's not 5-on-4. It's now 4-on-3.
Right. Yeah.
So there's even that much more ice.
Right.
For Harvard's defensemen to use. And they killed the penalty, got into the zone, and threw the puck at the net. That's all it takes. You can't score if you don't shoot. If you don't throw the puck at the net, nothing can happen. And look what happens. They throw the puck at the net, they get a deflection, and the game's over. And the place exploded.
Yeah.
The place absolutely exploded. Listening to one of the USCHO podcasts today, one of the commentators was talking about how loud the ASU fans were, and they were. He also goes, well, maybe it had to do with the where the cameras and stuff were, but it doesn't matter. You heard throughout the whole game on Saturday night, the ASU crowd was large and in charge.
And not only the ASU crowd, but Joey DeCourt had about 30 people there as well watching it. But that didn't hurt.
Well, that doesn't hurt either. But they had to notice. The players had to notice. The coaches had to notice. And as this team goes on and wins, you're going to see more and more of that as this team goes on the road. I know for a fact, because I speak to some of the people from the New York Alumni Association are going down to Princeton in 2 weeks. People from the Philadelphia Alumni Association are heading down to Princeton for those games. And the Washington, D.C. chapter of the Alumni Association are heading up to Princeton. So the more this team wins, when you look at the fact that the hockey team is going to play games in an area that ASU teams don't come and play in very often.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you have the combination of the team being in an area where they don't normally play, regardless of what the sport is. You don't see the baseball team come up here. You don't see the softball team, the basketball teams. Maybe once in a while with Bobby Hurley as the coach, the basketball team will come up here, but it's
Right.
still not a regular thing. Whereas with the hockey team, they're going to have to play teams from Boston. They're going to have to play teams from Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan. And ASU teams don't go there that often. So now you have a situation where you have large alumni bases. They want to see teams from their school play. It's hockey,
Right.
which we are biased, but we know that hockey fans in general, there's no middle ground. You either love the game and are completely passionate about it, or you don't know anything about the game.
Right.
So you add those things together, and with the fact that this team is playing as well as it can, and you're going to see large contingents of ASU fans in the stands. And don't think the other teams don't notice either.
Oh, yeah.
Because the athletic director says, oh, I could sell an extra 500 tickets
Right.
if I get them to come here. All right, I have to go there to reciprocate. But come on in, guys. Let's go. Come on.
Yep. Exactly.
So it makes
All right,
a big difference.
We got a few minutes left. Let's talk about Nebraska Omaha coming up. It's a very rare case that a team that's an independent plays the same team twice, actually 4 times, 2 series. But that's what's happening this weekend. I mean, ASU pretty much dominated them about a month ago, and now
About a month ago.
They're going to go to their barn, and I'm sure UNO is not happy with what happened here, and is going to try to extract a little revenge, shall we say? But
Yeah.
I'm going with it. I think this is the road sweep. I really do. I think that ASU is going to go there ready to. I think they're a little upset over this weekend because I think they thought they should have played better Friday and had a better result. And I think they thought they was too close on Saturday. And I think they're going to take a little bit of that scoring. They proved they can score against Nebraska Omaha, right? So expect them to continue to score. Nebraska Omaha hasn't gotten that much better over the last month.
Well, this is what I'll say because you know how much I hate making predictions, okay? These are 2 very big games, okay? Omaha is going to be very angry at what happened. I can't imagine that ASU is going to take them lightly.
No.
So if they can somehow manage to get a sweep this weekend, that just leaves them more margin for error when they play at Princeton.
Yep.
We talked about this 6-game stretch going 4-2. Well, they're 1-1. You figure that at some point they're going to get 2 splits and a sweep to get to that 4-2 record. And not to disparage Omaha, but if you were going to pick the place where that was a possibility, this was going to be it. You don't want to have to go and win 2 games at Princeton in a couple of weeks. Take care of business this week, and hopefully they do, and go into those Princeton games at 12-4.
Right.
And at least where they are.
Yep. And then after that, we've got Colorado College coming to what I like to call the how should we call Oceanside? Let's just call it Oceanside. They'll be coming to Oceanside for the experience, and that could put them conceivably at a 14-15 win first half of the season before they face their own Desert Classic opponents.
14 wins before you get to the Desert Classic. Where do we sign? I'll take that right now. Forget 15 and 16. If you're telling me they're going to get to 14, that means you got at least 2 14 would be, that would be 4 out of the next 8. I'll take that. Where do I sign? Right now.
Yep,
I'll take that right now.
I'll send it via fax.
Okay, we can do that.
Paul, I appreciate your time. It's going to be a fun week again. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Scott.
We're going to pay close attention to what's going on in Nebraska Omaha this weekend and come back next week with hopefully Coach Powers' 202nd, 203rd wins of his coaching career.
Here's hoping.
All right. Thank you, sir.
See you next week.
We'll talk to you again next week.